Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of officially welcome everyone because I see it is 12 o'clock, or actually 12:02. So I am Debbie Rosen. I'm one of the two owners of the Study Pro. We have Lindsay in the background here. And Penny, I'm going to officially welcome you here in a minute. But I just wanted to give everybody who might be new to the Study Pro just a sense of who we are. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary. That's why in the lower right-hand corner, you see the 10 years of Study Pro. We're super excited. We just had last week an anniversary open house with all of the area's professionals, so people who do psychological testing, neuropsych testing, folks that are therapists and psychologists and developmental pediatricians and psychiatrists, and we had a lot of learning specialists from different schools, and they're all interested. Of course, we all are interested as a community and how we can help all of our students build executive function skills, and also, of course, parents to build more skills to help our students and ourselves actually to manage our own executive functions and thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And so there's a number of services that we provide. Everything, the atomic unit of everything we do is about helping students and even ourselves to notice what are the barriers that stand between me and those things that I want to do. I think a lot of times executive functions are thought of as just, well, if I have a list or if I have a plan, then I can do these things. But we all know that sometimes a plan isn't enough, that it's about executing and what are the barriers that we have that are keeping us from starting, in our case, that homework or turning it in or studying for that test. And a lot of times we know it's really just those missing executive function and study skills. And so, that's what we talk about. We teach that in the context of workshops and courses. One of the things we teach is a workshop to help students develop executive functions using AI. And so we offer that throughout the school year and the summer. And so we can talk a little more about that. If you're interested, you can email us. We also have a study skills and strategies course, which is, the full context of study skills, time management, organization, breaking work down, how to study for tests, how to self-advocate, how to chunk our work, how to initiate. So these are the skills that we really have never taught the kids in schools. As much as we want to, there's just not a lot of time to teach an entire system. And so our 5-week course is offered starting again in January, and the dates are on here. And then we offer it all summer long. And that's for middle school and high school, as well as we have one for 4th and 5th grade, which is also layering a lot of information around growth mindset and how not to be, I give up if we get frustrated. And then we are going to continue this series that we're lucky enough to have today, and I'm welcoming everyone to hear today, with Nicole McGarry, who is a counselor and one of our dear friends of the Study Pro. And she's also doing a parenting workshop with us that we're going to start in January, and we're going to have more information coming out. So this is an introduction to what we're going to be looking at in the workshop more in depth. So it's trying to help us manage our own emotions so that we can do a better job managing our child's emotions. And then Dr. Karen Varblow, who's come back after a number of years, and she's a behavioral pediatrician and ADHD expert. And so she's going to talk again a little about what she calls the no-go model, KNOW. So those invitations will be coming out. And then finally, of course, we're like super excited to welcome the star of the show here, which is you, Penny. And I've had such lovely conversations with you. And of course, you are the creator of Signal Parenting Framework and the founder of Parenting ADHD and Autism. And of course, you are a behavior nerd because I know you have a degree in sociology, which is all about, the fascination you've had with why people do what they do. And I agree with that. I think if we understand the need behind the behavior, it makes it so much easier for us to manage our own emotions and to help understand the behavior and have more empathy. And of course, you have that lived experience. I know we share that too. A mom of 2 young adults. You were talking about your daughter earlier. I know you have a son too. And I know that they have helped you build a lot of these skills and really motivated you to build the signal framework. So I'm going to stop sharing so you can start sharing.
Okay.
And as we turn things over, I am super excited. I've had a chance to preview these slides, and they are phenomenal. So everybody, please give a warm welcome to Penny. We are going to do a couple quick things before we start. One is we're going to hold the questions to the end, but please to write your questions in the chat if you have them, and I will make note of them and we'll bring them. We'll come back to them at the end. And then there's also a worksheet that Penny developed directly for everybody that's participating here, and we'll send a link in the chat to the worksheet that you can use after you hear the information. And then we have some other offers at the end for some other information that I think will be really useful for all the parents who are online. So I'm going to mute myself, Penny, but I want to
Okay.
give you a very warm welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a topic that I'm so passionate about talking about and sharing about and helping parents with. So, we're really going to talk about a new way to understand behavior so that we can respond in ways that are actually helpful. Because if we just treat what we see on the surface and we're not treating what's underneath, what's really causing that surface behavior, we can't really affect change, not sustainable change anyway. And so, my shift here in the way that we understand behavior is that we have to look at it as a signal. When we start to dig deeper and look for that symbol, that signal, then we can really start to understand what's happening for our kids. And signal parenting framework is very much based on biology. This is neuroscience. And starting out when my neurodivergent kid was young, I didn't know any of this stuff. And it took me years to learn this stuff. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like this could really be helping so many people. And there's so much more information available online now. There's so many more people helping online than when my son was diagnosed in 2008 with first ADHD and then later when he was 12 years old with autism. And so just over the years, everything I've learned, I have figured out kind of boils down into the step by step. If we take these steps, if we follow this framework, we can have the best outcomes possible and also the best relationships and family life possible. Because when we have a neurodivergent kid or a kid who struggles, it's not just the kid who struggles, it's the entire family. And it has affected everyone in our family really deeply when the kids were young. And so, the tradition is that we're taught to manage behavior. We need to fix it. We need to stop it. We need to control it, right? And our educational models are built on that. Traditional parenting is built on that. But really, it's not something to fix. It's actually information that we need to follow. Debbie introduced me a little bit at the beginning. This is my neurodivergent kid, Luke, when he graduated from high school. And it was a drive-through COVID graduation, of course. So we didn't get to celebrate as much as I had hoped we would celebrate when we got to that point, because it was so hard to get to that point. And so again, the signal parenting framework has really just been born from the research that I've done and the life that I have lived so far in that parenting journey with my own kid. And really, it all boils down to the fact that behavior is really a signal of need, a signal of lagging skill, a signal of some way that this kid needs more. And as Debbie alluded to earlier, I always start presentations now with a breathing exercise with everyone because we're about to talk about some stuff that is really difficult. And our nervous systems, as we're going to get into here, get triggered and we get dysregulated. And we feel that in our bodies, right? And it's uncomfortable. And so, if we can just take a moment to pause and breathe and sort of reset and settle our nervous systems a little bit, it's going to be a little bit easier then to talk about the stuff that is more difficult to really navigate. So, there's a graphic here on the screen for anybody who's watching that will just kind of help you. We're going to breathe in and then breathe out. And you're welcome to do that multiple times. The more you do it, the more it's going to help. But I'm going to continue on here. in the presentation. So really the goal here is to help you to shift from managing, correcting, trying to eliminate challenging behavior to understanding and addressing it through that lens of our autonomic nervous system, because our autonomic nervous system is actually controlling that behavior 99% of the time. It's not our kids an intention of challenging us. It's actually their nervous system trying to protect them. So you're going to learn to decode what your kid's behavior is communicating and respond with regulation, connection, and confidence instead of control. So we're shifting from a compliance-based model to a connection-based model. And the first piece of that is that autonomic nervous system. Our body is always the one that speaks first. It happens in an instant. It is instinctual. We have zero control over it. That's why it's called the autonomic nervous system, because it's completely automatic. And this really helps us when we focus on this to understand how that biology is driving a lot of the behavior that we are hoping to improve or change. And a really huge turning point, probably the very first one in our own parenting of our kid, was this quote from Ross Greene: "Children do well if they can. If they can't, we need to figure out what's getting in their way. But they do well if they can. It's not if they want to, it's if they actually can." That means that behavior struggles are most often a can't and not a won't. And they may feel so much like a won't on the surface, right? They may feel, you may feel in your bones that this kid is doing this on purpose. But honestly, most of the time, they are not, as instinctual responses. So behavior isn't really our problem. It is a signal. Every meltdown, every shutdown, outburst, it's your child's body sending them and you information about safety. Now, when we talk about safety, we're talking about felt safety. We often just think of physical safety as my body in danger, as their threat to my body, to my person. But there's also a lot of other realms of safety. There's social, psychological, mental, all of that counts too. For instance, for me, I have social anxiety. I also have general anxiety too, but as a kid and a teenager, especially, social anxiety was the main anxiety. And so I was constantly getting this information from my body that I sensed some sort of threat. And that threat was typically social. What do other people think about me? Are they judging me? Will they accept me? Will they not accept me? Right? That was all happening automatically from that anxiety brain. And then my autonomic nervous system saying, oh, there's people you don't know around you. They might be judging you. Or there's peers around you. They may not accept you. I usually use anxiety as a good example because we often feel anxiety in our bodies. You know, my stomach would get really tight and I would feel nauseous. My hands would start to tingle, like I had physical sensations from a rise in anxiety, which was a signal from my nervous system saying, we don't think it's safe right now. And so that just sort of illustrates for you the fact that it's not just that physical safety, it's safety in a lot of ways. It is throughout our kids' day-to-day lives, different things that might make them feel unsafe. And when we talk about school, like there's also a sense of like not feeling safe from thinking and learning and doing in those ways. Kids can feel like they don't measure up, they don't fit in, especially kids who struggle with learning or ADHD or autism or neurodivergence. And so there are a lot of signals coming at our kids that they may not be safe. Traditional behavior strategies really fail for a few reasons. They target the symptoms, not the signals. So that symptom is what you're seeing on the outside. It feels like disrespect. It feels like defiance, opposition, shut down, which just feels like, they're being obstinate and just not going to comply. Whereas when we look at it as a signal, we're understanding that there's more to it than that. Traditional behavior strategies also assume choice, and the brain is in survival mode. And we're going to go into this more deeply. But when the brain is in survival mode, there is no choice because the thinking brain is inaccessible or barely accessible. So, choice while in survival brain, they cannot happen together biologically. And then they assume that we can use logic when the nervous system actually needs to feel safe first. And again, it's that same thing. Our thinking brain that uses logic and reasoning is not available when we are in survival mode, when the nervous system does not feel safe in that dysregulation. You can't reason a nervous system back to safety. No amount of logic or reasoning. Believe me, I spent years trying. I spent years. I call myself the great rationalizer. And all I wanted to do every time a kid had a meltdown was talk him through it and let's get beyond it and let's work it out, right? And move on. And I didn't understand yet that his brain was stuck and his thinking brain was not accessible. And he had to get through this thing, and his brain and his body had to recover before that logic and reasoning could come back online. So their brain in these moments, it can't cooperate, it can't connect, and it cannot learn. There is a thing called availability to learn. And physiologically, when our kids are in these survival modes at school, they're not available to learn. They might have their butt in the chair, they might even be looking toward the teacher, but if they are dysregulated, they are not actually learning. So I equate the autonomic nervous system to an inner bodyguard. It's doing exactly what it is built to do to keep them safe. So if you have a kid whose prickles come out when something isn't going right, say they're really frustrated and they don't manage frustration really well, and that ends up coming out in kind of this fight mechanism, it's their nervous system doing what it was meant to do. It is trying to keep them safe. It is putting up a wall and saying, if you come any closer, if you keep pushing this where I don't feel safe, I'm going to have to hurt you so that I can stay safe, right? It feels very intentional. It feels terrible as a parent to take on, to be receiving that type of behavior. But it's crucial to understand that that is not intention. It is the internal bodyguard that is saying, I feel a threat and I am going into protection mode. It's always scanning the world. It's always asking the question, am I safe right now? And again, it's that safe, not just physical, but in all those other ways as well. When the answer feels like no to the body, even if that threat is just like a loud sound or a harsh tone, or maybe a change in what they were expecting, a hard transition, that bodyguard doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't wait for thinking. It just responds. And you have the same internal bodyguard too. We all have the same autonomic nervous system. Our nervous systems may react in different ways, go into different modes of protection. And we might have a more sensitive nervous system that gets triggered more often, or less sensitive, but we all have the basic structure of this autonomic nervous system. So all of this is also true for you as well. So when that bodyguard detects a threat, when the nervous system feels unsafe, it activates a mode of protection. And this is what we typically understand as fight, flight, or freeze. These are different states of our nervous system and different states of dysregulation. So, fight or flight is that activated state of dysregulation. If your kid is in fight or flight, they are saying, their body is saying, I need movement to feel safe. I need to do something to feel safe. If you have a kid who freezes, and by the way, most of us have some of these at different times and to different degrees. It's not that we only have one. But a freeze kid is really going to just shut down. It's immobility. So the nervous system is going to respond with either mobility or immobility, depending on the situation and that particular individual and their nervous system. And also the skills, right? Because when we learn more skills about regulating and self regulation, then it's easier not to slip all the way into freeze. Um, and each of these modes is really the nervous system, again, saying, I don't feel safe right now, so I'm going to do something. I'm either going to fight, I'm going to run away, or I am going to shut down and freeze like a possum. I'm going to play dead, so to speak, until the threat goes away, because it's all I can do. Um, and our goal isn't to stop these responses. They are natural. We all have them as part of being a human. The goal is actually to help the bodyguard, the nervous system, feel safe enough to get back to being regulated. In my membership group called the Regulated Kids Project, we work a lot on regulation. And so I developed the different animal instincts that relate to those different states of the nervous system so that it's easier for kids to understand. So when we're talking to our kids about their nervous system, how it responds, why they have some of the behaviors they have, because they don't like to have these challenging behaviors any more than we like to receive them or be around them. And so this is an easy way to explain to especially younger kids, but as teenagers too, like these are the instincts that animals have. We also have those instincts as well. And here's how they come out. And this is what they're telling us. This is how our body is communicating to us. If you feel the prickles coming on, you know, you're like a possum and those prickles are just coming out automatically. You didn't think about it. You didn't choose it. It just happened. And then you have to get back to regulation where you can, you know, feel safe enough to put those spikes back down and get on with things. So when our bodyguard kicks into that protection mode and it chooses one of those modes of protection, we're either in fight, flight, or freeze. What else is happening is that our emotions are flooding. Logic and reasoning shut down, as I've already talked about, and the survival brain takes charge. And it is the only one in any control at that point. In those moments, your kid cannot access the skills that you might be asking them for. The reasoning, the logic, like we've already talked about, but also self control, empathy, taking charge of their behavior and what they're doing because their body has taken over. And when that survival brain takes charge, that thinking brain is barely accessible, if at all accessible. So that then informs us that safety has to come before strategies. So often in the neurodivergent community, we seek strategies, we try to implement all these strategies, but if a kid doesn't feel safe, no strategy can work because strategy requires the thinking brain. And if they don't feel safe, they have no access or very little to the thinking brain. So we have to look at the nervous system first. It's what I call nervous system first parenting. We have to have influence there and help our kids with self-regulation and to get back to regulated when they need our help to do that before we can have any strategies that are going to be effective. So we've talked a little bit about the survival brain, but I want to go in a little more depth with you about the three brain model because we have these three different parts of the brain and they have different responsibilities. And that survival brain is that oldest, fastest system. It is always going to go first if it is needed. And as you saw a couple of slides ago, it is going to bypass the emotional brain, it's going to bypass the thinking brain, and it's taking charge, right? But the emotional brain now is that second one to come back online. And that's our feelings, our relationships, our connection. Often memory lives in the emotional brain as well. And then the thinking brain, which is logic, problem solving, decision making, learning, reasoning, all of that requires our thinking brain. So when all three are together working in harmony, then we have regulation. But if our thinking brain has dimmed, or if our survival brain has completely taken over everything, then we are dysregulated, or our kids are dysregulated. That bodyguard has just taken over, and the survival brain is like, okay, I've got this. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to do, fight, flight, or freeze to try to keep you safe. So, as I said a second ago, safety is really the key for strategy to be effective, because that thinking brain is offline, the emotional brain can't connect, and behavior becomes protection. It's not defiance. It's not what it feels like to you on the surface. It's not even what it looks like most of the time. It's actually just self protection. So, our first job as a caring adult in a kid's life isn't about correcting behavior. It isn't about seeking compliance. It's safety first. Because when we return to safety, that reactivates all the other parts of the brain, and that makes learning and regulation possible. So once that sense of safety is restored, then all parts of the brain are online again. But it starts with survival brain, right? Then it moves upward physiologically through our bodies. Survival brain is kind of that back brainstem area. Emotional brain is kind of in the center, and then thinking brain is in the front. And it truly moves in that order. Once the emotional brain gets turned back on, then the thinking brain can come online as well. So we go in that order, and then recovery is that order, right? Emotions come back online, then thinking and control come back online. That is a recovery that takes time. We can't, when we see meltdowns, a kid can't turn off a meltdown. It's not a tantrum, it's not intentional. It is their brain and body have hijacked them, that has taken over, and it has to have time to recover. And that's what this recovery looks like, is these different parts of the brain engaging again. And you have a significant role in how this works, how this goes. Your energy is the message. It is either co escalation or co regulation. So if we're reactive to, and that's going to escalate the situation, even if we come in calm, but with lots of words and language and logic and reason, like I did for a long time, they can't process that, and it's actually escalating the survival brain response, because it is piling on to things that they can't manage at that moment. So all of our energy is contagious. It's the message that we're sending our kid. And what we want to offer is a steadiness, a safety that is going to help to bring the body back to the sense of safety, and then bring all of the parts of the brain back to working in harmony. So we need to offer that settled, steady energy first in order to be helpful in these situations, instead of escalating the situations. But that's really hard. It's really, really hard to stay steady and reasonable and rational when your kid is freaking out or has completely shut down. And it's because we are wired for that. It's that protection mode again. We are wired to respond in kind. If someone is yelling at me, my brain says, yell back to protect yourself. So, as the caring adult, we have more practice in controlling ourselves and being less reactive. We have more of an ability to do that. So, it's on us to override that biology. But so many times parents say, I don't know how to show up calm and steady. It's so upsetting. It's overwhelming. It gets me so aggravated and frustrated and angry. How do I do that? And, being upset is natural. That's just your body's natural response. That's being human. Overriding it is what takes practice and what is difficult, but it is possible. But because our bodies are trying to match each other's energy, it is so important that we show up as kind of a steady anchor for our kids when they are having a hard time. Every time you're able to stay steady, you're influencing their nervous system's journey back to getting regulated through that recovery process. And one thing that I learned early on, and this is what I always advise parents when they're telling me, like, I have no idea how to stay calm in this situation, I just can't do it, is to take a pause first. When we take a pause, before we respond, before we say anything, before we do anything, it gives our nervous system a second to really settle. It gives us the message that our nervous system is safe, but also it gives our kids the message that there is safety, right? And what I learned from a therapist named Robert Cox, who's a therapist, I think, in the Midwest, is just to take a big empathetic breath and exhale really slowly and then start dealing with the situation, because that is giving us that pause for our own nervous system and giving us just a moment to be able to respond instead of being reactive. When you pause, you're sending your nervous system that message: I'm safe enough to slow down. And when we slow down, it's giving that signal to our kids' nervous system: it's safe enough to slow down. I'm safe right now. So that just moment of space can change everything. I promise you, it changed so much in my house. We had so much of an easier time managing when my kid was having a hard time, because I wasn't coming in and escalating the situation. Others weren't coming in and escalating the situation. Am I perfect? No, because nobody is. So yes, there were times where I was reactive, of course. But my natural response is now to come in slow and steady, take a breath, and see what I can do. And it's a natural response for me too. You know, before we started, we were talking about the Hurricane Helene just decimating Asheville. And I was calm and steady through that. Surprisingly, like, I did not even have enough water in the house. Like, we didn't have water for a couple months. And like, I was not prepared. There was not enough food here, but for maybe a couple of days. And the stores weren't open. The roads were closed because there were trees down everywhere. And somehow I was able to stay calm and focus on what needed to be done and take care of the issue. 10 years ago, I would have been a puddle in the floor in a corner. Like, I would have just lost it and freaked out, at least for a little bit, right? I think all of our bodies at some point are like, okay, we got to do something here. But um, practicing this for years now has helped me as well as my kid. And it's maybe helped me more. But it's also modeling for our kids. When we show up that way, we're modeling, hey, when something's hard, take a pause, take a breath, and let's make sure our thinking brain is online so that we can problem solve this. And as I was just explaining, because our kids borrow that message from our nervous system, our pause is cueing them that they are safe, that they can catch up now. And remember that your energy is way more important than words when kids are intense or melting down, because again, they can't process those words. So those are actually escalating the situation, where if you can just be present and be slow and steady, that helps so much more when a kid is dysregulated. So I've been using this word co-regulation. For anybody who doesn't know, what it really looks like is a regulated adult, because a dysregulated adult is never going to be able to help a dysregulated kid regulate. We have to be regulated first. We're modeling appropriate responses. We're offering that calm steadiness for our kid to attune to, what I call the steady anchor. We're maybe moving together, because we have those mirror neurons that we were just talking about. We want to respond in kind. If we do something rhythmic and we're moving together in tandem, it's very regulating to the nervous system. So sometimes that looks like bouncing a ball back and forth together. Sometimes that looks like going for a walk together or a bike ride together. It could be maybe dancing together. right? And I'm not saying that your kid is going to be screaming expletives at you and then suddenly be like, yeah, let's dance together. Like that's not happening, right? But this is what co-regulation looks like before you get to that point. Once you're in meltdown, all you can do is help your kid feel safe, provide that co-regulation as that steady presence and anchor, and wait for the recovery. That's all you can do at that point because, again, you don't have the thinking brain to access. As I said very earlier, kids must be regulated to be biologically available to learn. They can be sitting at their desk to do homework, but completely unavailable to do it. If they are dysregulated, it is very hard, if not impossible, in that moment. They can be sitting in the classroom. They can even look compliant, look like they are paying attention and learning, and actually nothing is getting through and nothing is being processed and retained. So it's super important, again, that we are nervous system first when we are addressing challenging behavior. So I want to just give you a brief overview of the signal framework so that you can take that and start to implement it in your own family as well. We are decoding behavior within that framework, and then we're also helping to make adjustments if necessary and to lead with connection. We've talked about this a couple of times already, but it is this important that I have it in here multiple times. Safety is required before any skills can be accessed and before any strategies can work. You cannot teach skills to a bodyguard in protection mode. You just cannot. So here is the full signal framework, and it spells out signal. Each letter there represents a different piece of that framework. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one. So S is to spot the state. This is what we've been talking about all this time so far. That very first step is to notice which animal instinct has come out, which protection mode has the bodyguard sent in to keep your kids safe. And you may feel like they're safe, but their body does not feel like they're safe. So we have to accept that there is a feeling of not being safe, whether that's rational or logical or not, because the body has already responded in that way. It is already sending that signal. So the first step is really to ask yourself, what nervous system state are they in? Which animal instinct is here? Are we in fight like a porcupine, flight like a cheetah, or freeze like a possum? And that is going to give you more information because remember, if we're in fight or flight, we need movement. If we're in freeze, we need things to be slower, softer, less or zero movement, right? So this is giving you a signal as a parent of what your kid is needing in that moment, biologically, what their nervous system is needing. When you know which state that bodyguard is in, you know how to respond, right? So spot the state then becomes that bridge from understanding what's going on for your kid and their body and their nervous system to actually taking action. So when you learn to see that state first, you're pretty much automatically going to stop looking at behavior like a personal attack, like something intentional, and you're going to start reading it as biology and really interpreting it in a more systematic way. And that just really helps to take some of that personal hurt from the behavior that's coming at you. I is for interpret. Now we need to interpret what that signal is telling us as far as the need. The question you ask yourself at this point is, what is this behavior trying to tell me? Because as we established early on, as Ross Greene teaches us, behavior is communication. So here we're getting curious. We're noticing things. We're trying to uncover what's really underneath it. My mantra when my son was young was, he's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. He's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. And that would just play in my head when things were challenging because I needed to remember that it wasn't intentional, it wasn't personal. It was a signal, a communication of something that was needed or a lagging skill. So refusal on the surface might actually be anxiety underneath. Hyperactivity on the surface might be just this huge biological overwhelming need to move. Shutdown could be a sensory overload. Shutdown could be too much frustration and I don't know how to deal with it. And so I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to do anymore. Every behavior is a clue. G is for grounding your energy, because as we've been talking about this whole time, your energy affects your kids' experience around you, right? And it affects how they are able to recover or for things to get worse. So before you respond, you're going to do that pause and that check in with yourself that we've already talked about. That is step 3 in the framework. The N is for noticing needs and emotions. At this point in this process, you're asking yourself, what do they need right now? What emotion could be driving the behavior that I'm seeing? It also is asking yourself, is there a lagging skill here? Is there a need for support? Is there a basic need that's not being met? And, safety is one of those basic needs. So when we think about it, that's this biological primal need that we have. And so safety obviously is going to be one of the answers here, but what else is it? I always teach parents to ask yourself, what else could this be? It feels like disrespect. It feels like intention. It feels like whatever. And I feel certain that it is that, but you still need to ask yourself, what else could it be? Because 99% of the time, it is something else. It's not really what it feels like. It's not really even what you're certain that it is. So when you notice what's real, the fear, the overwhelm, the sadness, the lagging skills, then you're able to help their body to settle and to rejoin you. When I started to learn a lot of this, and my son was probably around middle school age, maybe later middle school age, and he would get really upset and really dysregulated. And I would just say to him, okay, our thinking brains are not online right now. We cannot solve this problem right now. We just can't do it biologically. But I really want to help you to solve this problem. I really want to help you figure out what's going on and to feel better. So I think we just need to take a bit of a break so we can settle a little bit in our bodies, and then we can problem solve and we can figure this out. And it was a huge relief to him because he was blaming himself for all these behaviors that he wished didn't happen. Right. And so it was relief, it was information, and it was a way forward. And it was that piece of really noticing what is going on and taking the pause that we need when we need it in order to be able to keep going through this process and solve problems. A is adjusting expectations and environment. Ask yourself at this point, what do I need to shift? Maybe I need to reduce the demand. We're not saying that we're never going to get to that goal, but maybe we need to step back. Maybe we need to chunk it. Maybe we need to lower the expectation for now. I always add the word yet to the end. My kid can't tie his shoes yet. My kid can't do his homework without my help yet. My kid can't get ready in the morning without me reminding him of a million things yet, right? If we put the yet on there, we're not being permissive. We're not giving up on our kid or anything that we hope that they'll be able to achieve. We're just stretching the timeline, which is what neurodivergent kids need. And then lastly, we're leading with connection. We're not leading as in, I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it, you're going to follow me. We're leading as in, I'm modeling regulation, I'm modeling that pause, I'm leaning into our relationship and connection, because regulation requires connection. Our bodies require connection to be regulated. So that happens through relationship. That's where we are able to build safety. So a relationship has to come first, and everything else falls in on top of that. When we don't have a solid, steady relationship with our kids, they are fighting us. They are not trusting us. They are not taking our lead on anything. right? A lot of things become bigger problems or new problems when we're disconnected in that relationship. So we really want to lean into connection. What can I do day to day, little things that help to build that connection with my kid? Because that is the ultimate bridge back to being regulated. So you're leading with warmth, with safety, and you're helping their bodyguard to stand down, to say, oh, I'm safe with this person. I've got this. Even if this is a challenging environment for me, I have a person with me that I feel safe with. That's going to help me in that environment. Or maybe somebody's asking me to do something that's really challenging for me. But if I have a safe person with me, it feels more doable to my body. So ultimately, it's that behavior, then body, then signal. Behavior is what we're seeing on the surface, the words, the actions, the outbursts, the shutdowns, the refusals, all that hard stuff. That is the behavior. Then the body is really the source of that behavior. It's what's driving it, it's what's triggering it. And it's that internal state of the nervous system, that regulated fight, flight, or freeze. And then the signal is what the body's reaction is trying to tell us. What is that behavior that is born from the nervous system trying to tell me about the need? So, some self reflection here that I want you to think about as you go through your day and the rest of your week is, what signal might your kids' behavior be showing you right now? Take a behavior that is a challenge and ask yourself, what could be the signal? Brainstorm. You may not know right away. You might really need to dig into it. You might need to list 5 or 10 things that might be a possibility of feeding into that, and then drill down to what could be going on. And honestly, our kids are complex. There's probably more than one thing going on there. And then what would it look like to respond with safety instead of with control or an eye on compliance? And it's going to feel so much better to you too. It's not just going to feel better to your kid, it's going to feel so much better for you too. And the worksheets that I provided that I think Debbie is going to send out after the webinar will help you to work more detail through that. Excuse me. So, the thought that I just want you to take away from this is to remember that behavior isn't a problem. Shift your mindset about behavior. It isn't a problem, it's a signal. And when you follow it, you're able to change the story for your kid, for yourself, for your entire family, probably for their teachers and other adults in their life as well. It's a huge shift. It can be really challenging. It takes a lot of time and practice, but it also can really truly transform your entire family. It definitely did for me. That was finally the turning point that we had. And as Debbie mentioned early on, I have a meltdown reset transformation pack available if you all want to grab it. It's on sale for $27 on my website. I can pop the link in here in the chat for everyone in just a minute as well, for anyone who's interested. And it just goes through in more detail what we talked about here about meltdowns in particular, and then has some guidance for you for before, during, and after a meltdown, what's most helpful, and also some activities for our kids so that they can learn the skills that help them with regulation and building emotional intelligence along the way, so that we can reduce the meltdowns, we can reduce the number of times that they are having a hard time.
Well, that's incredibly helpful, Penny. And I know that because you have such beautifully presented materials, all of everything that you have that I've ever seen from you is it's really easy to see and to use. And I think not hiding a lot of what you said is, of course, makes so much sense, and not hiding the skills that your own child needs from them, right? And being able to name them is just so important. We talk about that at Study Pro all the time. And Kim had a question I wanted to jump in. Can you give an example of how to be that calming presence for them without piling on logical words in a calm voice? which is usually what happens at our house. So we're maybe
Mhm.
jumping into the logic when we're not in that brain state yet.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to stop ourselves, especially for like a type A fixer like I am. Like you just want to get in there and solve the problem, right? But what we need to do is just remind ourselves that we need no talking. So in that meltdown pack, I actually have the steps for what to do during a meltdown. And it is basically to provide comfort and that sense of safety. So you're going to slow down your movements. You're going to soften your voice with what you do say. You're going to slow down what you're saying. You stay present if your kid needs that. If your kid doesn't need that or doesn't want it, then you need to go away and give them the time and the space. Like they're giving us the information of what they need. And then, showing validation and empathy. So we're doing that with the softer tone, we're slowing down our words, and then we stop talking. We either are present or we go away for a bit until they're able to recover and calm down. So it's really about how can I provide the energy that they're going to receive that's going to send the message that they are safe right now. They are safe where they are and they are safe with me. It's
Mhm.
not going to turn it off, right? It's not a switch that we can flip. It's a recovery process, but that starts that recovery process because they can't
Mhm.
start the recovery process until they actually feel safe. That
Mhm.
has to
Yeah.
come first.
Mhm.
And so that is really what we're leaning into. And it's just very
Mhm.
basic. Like we really need to strip down all of our instincts, show empathy and validation, let them know you're here for them, they are safe, and then let it be until
Mhm.
it gets better. And that can be really
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, it can be really difficult, or it can be simple maybe if we try it, because as you said, we kind of just strip away all of our own instincts. And often we use this term about sitting in discomfort, and we in our coaching sessions often have to do that too. We might ask a student something, and they may not feel safe enough to answer, or they may be dysregulated because of a lot of the emotion they may feel around their homework or getting started. So, sitting in that discomfort of our own, feeling like we want to do something and just having some silence, allowing them to surface their own feelings is really key.
Yeah.
Um, and we have a question about what can a parent do with a teenager who keeps yelling and talking and following the parent around the house? It's a great question.
Mm, yes. Because they're feeling abandoned. They're feeling abandoned in that moment. And so what you're seeing is their desperation to feel safe. That is the signal that they need you to be present with them in order to feel safe. And, I always, now that I know better, I laugh about like sending our kids to their room because the message that we're actually sending them is of rejection. I can't be around you right now. I don't like your behavior. So you need to go away. That's rejection if that's the way that they interpret it. It's not the way we intend it, but it's the way it can be received. And so being really careful about what message is my kid reading into what I'm doing. And often when they follow us around, they won't let it go. It's because they're feeling like we are are invalidating what they're going through. If I walk away from you and you tell me you're having a hard time, whether you tell me in a nice way with words or not, if I walk away from you, it feels invalidating. It feels like something's
Mhm.
wrong with me. And it also feels like you don't care to help me. You don't see my struggle and you don't want to help me with my struggle, right? So really that validation empathy is really important. And then, for a teenager, I would use that script that I used with my own kid. Like right now, our thinking brains are truly not available to us. I can't help you right now because of the state that our are in. And so we need to just take a breath, take a pause. I can stay with you if that's what you want, or I can give you a break, but we need to pause for a minute and then we can start to work on solving this problem because I do really care, and just reminding them of that. I really do
Mhm.
care, but this is not the way that we can do anything that's going to be productive right now. And it's not your fault. It's a signal from your body. It's your body trying to protect you. It can be so,
And
so challenging.
it can be. And then there was the follow-up from Robin too, which I think is really important, which is so now we're fast forwarding to another day when we're all calm, that we can engage with them. And we do want to talk to them about the fact that they're that we can engage with them with what we call climbing the ladder here, the verbal back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. Because in fact, that's what Nicole will talk about next week a lot is that climbing the ladder. Because when we're dysregulated and move to a higher level, then the only way to go is up. And so using the words that Penny you're talking about really is helpful to keep us from going that back and forth. But do you want to address Robin's question about telling the teenagers in another day that we're calm, that we cannot engage with them in that verbal back and forth because they're
Yeah,
dysregulated?
we can't teach skills when they're dysregulated. So we always want to practice regulation. We always want to build connection. We want to do all of those proactive things when our kids are feeling good and they're regulated, they're calm and steady, right? That's when they can take that on. That's when they can apply it to their memory. So it's easier to call on when things start to get hard. So building that relationship and that connection, talking about this is how your brain works and your body works, and this is what's happening. So when you get really upset again, I'm going to remind you that we can't solve this problem right now. Yeah, you don't want to spring that on them right in the middle of an intense situation. Thank you for that reminder because that's so important. We always, always want to start new things and build skills when things are good.
Mm-hmm.
And parents, I think we want to give them regulation strategies when they're dysregulated. Just breathe, go sit down for a minute, get a drink of water, whatever, and our intention again is to help, but they can't take that on in those moments. They have to learn those skills outside of it so that it's an automatic thing that they do when they start to feel dysregulated. That
It's
makes
always the
sense.
joke of have you ever has everyone talks about have you ever has it ever worked when someone told you just calm down? Has it ever worked for
Never.
you? Never. Never in the
No,
history of ever.
no. It feels so invalidating. Like it just
Yeah.
escalates, right?
Right. Like you have no right to be angry, just go calm down. So
Mm-hmm.
well, there were so many incredible nuggets in this, Penny. I really appreciate it. And especially this term that they're not being a problem, they're having a problem. And really for us to recognize, how our behaviors and our moods and our energies can really affect other people. And I think that can work in everybody in our household, not just not just our kids. But we really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who attended. Penny, this is invaluable. And I hope everyone takes advantage of all the materials that you provided. And thank you for creating a specific workshop for all the people that are here. So
You're
we're
so
looking forward
welcome.
to seeing everybody on December 12th, I think it is, for the next webinar. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. And you too, Penny. We're really grateful. Hopefully we can use all of our regulation skills with our big extended families around the table. So just
Now
in
is the time
time.
you will be challenged. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good
Thanks,
time for it.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.